Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing abrupt climate change. Fun with abrupt climate change. Or actually the opposite, which is no fun at all. Many things to get into today, of course. Thank you, everyone, for your awesome comments, and thank you for continuing to send me all the wonderful links. A lion's share of the things that I read are from people who drop links in the comments or people who send links in my emails. Please, I already have a plethora of links coming to my email, so there are a few people that are sending me links right now. It's all good, but I just literally don't have time to look at all the links. So if you would, please just drop them in the comments. And I will try to gather the ones that I can gather. This is actually from Facebook, I believe. Jennifer Hines posted this. This is from a few days ago, July 26th. The study on collapse they thought you should not read yet. A research paper concluding, this is from Jem Bendel, by the way, blog or wordpress.com, Jem Bendel. A research paper concluding that climate-induced collapse is now inevitable was recently rejected by anonymous reviewers of an academic journal. It has been released directly by the professor who wrote it to promote discussion of the necessary deep adaptation to climate chaos. I am releasing this paper immediately, directly, because I can't wait any longer in exploring how to learn the implications of the social collapse we now face, explained the author, Dr. Bendel, a full professor of sustainability leadership. In saying the paper was not suitable for publication, one of the comments from the reviewers questioned the emotional impact that the paper might have on readers. I was left wondering about the social implications of presenting a scenario for the future as inevitable reality, and about the responsibility of research in communicating climate change scenarios and strategies for adaptation, wrote one of the reviewers. As the authors pointed out, denial is a common emotional response to situations that are perceived as threatening and inescapable, leading to a sense of helplessness, inadequacy, and hopelessness, and ultimately disengagement from the issue. So basically, we don't want to scare people too much because we don't want them to run away with their hands over their ears, screaming, la, 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 I can't hear you. That perspective is discussed in the paper as one that enables denial. Professor Bendel explains in his response to the editor that the response may reflect the self-defeating hierarchical attitude towards society that many of us have in both academia and sustainability, where we censure our own exploration of a topic due to what we consider should or should not be communicated. Right, because you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. This is I'm just a very quick detour from what I'm going to say. We live in a world where we cannot tell the truth because it may upset somebody or offend somebody or hurt somebody's feelings. And that is the double-edged sword of being responsible for the things that you say and do in order that you don't hurt other people, right? So, political correctness is actually about concerning yourself with not walking all over somebody else's feelings just because because it doesn't affect you. Right? However, the flip side of that, the other edge to the knife is, if we can't say the truth, if we can't tell the truth because it's going to hurt somebody, then ultimately we all become stupider and more cowardly. So, you gotta, discretion is advised, but, if your truth is just out to hurt people, then just be quiet. But if your truth is actually out to help people and to enlighten people, then by all means, scream it at the top of your lungs. People's emotions be damned. That perspective is discussed in the paper, and I'm going to say I am very, very I'm very, very aware of how much this topic can hurt people. So I'm very careful about who and when I talk about it. But at the same time, it cannot be, you can't just walk around just, I'm not going to say anything. You know, the truth must be told. And people might be upset that you didn't tell them the truth if they knew that you knew the truth. Okay, anyways, moving on. There's both scholarship and experience on the impact of communicating about disaster, and I discussed that in the paper. Moreover, Bendel consulted with practicing psychotherapists on both the motivational and mental health implications of this analysis, and was reassured that perceptions of a collective tragic future should not in itself be a cause for depression. Instead, it could trigger transformative reflection, which could be supported and would be inevitable one day, given the inevitability of mortality for all human life. The paper offers a new framing for beginning to make sense of the disaster we face. We face called deep adaptation. It is one that Professor Bendel proposed in the keynote lecture 2 years ago and has influenced community dialogue on climate change in Britain in the past 2 years, including in Peterborough and Newcastle, as well as being used by the Dark Mountain Network. The paper, Deep Adaptation, a map for navigating climate tragedy, is downloadable as a PDF here. I'm going to link this below so y'all can check that out. The response of Professor Bendel to the editor of the journal follows below. A list of resources to support people as they process this information, including emotional support, is here. I don't know if I'm going to read this response because it's rather long. I'm going to link it below and you guys can check this out because I have a lot of other things to read. But yes, it's good to be aware that the truth can be harmful and can be hurtful, but you want to be able to say, you know, you want to be able to let people know what's going on. You want to be able to know what's going on. You want to be able to find that information. I'm really dying to do a political video, political/sociological video, talking about some current events because there's lots of very interesting things going on. Obviously, nothing as important as climate change, but Facebook starting to kind of clamp down on anything they deem as politically motivated propagandist / whatever. Obviously, YouTube is trying to do the same thing. There's lots of social media sites attempting to do this, squash and quash information that they don't want people to talk about. So there's lots to talk about in that arena, but I'm not going to get into that right now. Next up, this is from the Barents Observer. Loading, hold on one second. Let me make sure I got all this. I feel like and no, yes, okay. And just as a disclaimer, I think everybody understands that I am not myself a scientist. I am just a layperson who has been studying this information for a little while, and trying to just use this platform to, I'm basically reading articles and I'm basically conveying things that are said or talked about by climate scientists. And I also, have my own opinions about what those climate scientists have, what some of those conclusions are, and what I feel are more likely than others. And we all know what that is. But anyways, just had to throw that out there. Loading of nuclear fuel begins at floating power plant in Murmansk. So this is great news, as in really terrible news. Russia's first floating nuclear power plant will be thoroughly tested before towing to the North Siberian port of Pevek. So this is awesome. We have, nuclear power plants floating on the water now. That is because that's a great idea. Loading fuel to a floating nuclear power plant is not like fueling the oil tanks on many merchant vessels. Placing the nuclear fuel rods filled with uranium pellets is a comprehensive job. Last week, there's a video along with this article. At the end of it, you can check out. Last week, Rostekhnadzor, Russia's nuclear watchdog, approved the work to start the floating nuclear power plant named Academic Lomonosov is moored at Atom Float, the service base for the fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers in the Kola Bay on the east of the coast of the Barents Sea. Originally, plans were to fuel the reactors at a shipyard in St. Petersburg, where Academic Lomonosov was built, but Rosatom last year agreed with Norway's foreign ministry to wait with the reactor testing till after the plant had been towed around the coast of Norway. The Norwegians were afraid of potential leakages of radioactivity in its coastal waters in case of troubles during the towing. Also, Greenpeace and political party Yabloko protested testing of the plant in St. Petersburg, arguing any wrongdoings could cause radiation harm to the 5 million inhabitants in the city. Instead, reactor testing will now take place in Murmansk, Russia's largest Arctic port. The power plant was towed from St. Petersburg to Murmansk in May. Locals in Murmansk are not too worried. No media articles has voiced anyone's concern. In Murmansk, people are used to nuclear activities. The city is home to the world's only fleet of civilian nuclear-powered vessels and is neighboring several of the military Northern Fleet's bases with nuclear-powered submarines and a battlecruiser. Well, so that's okay. It's fine. There's lots of nuclear stuff here. Highly radioactive spent nuclear fuel is regularly transported through the city center by rail. Moving on, as for the safety of potentially nuclear hazardous work, loading the nuclear fuel to the floating nuclear power plant, this can be compared with similar work on the Vajik, Tamir, and Severomorkut nuclear-powered ships, said Andrei Zolotkov, a local representative of the Bologna Foundation, an environmental group working with nuclear safety issues. So he's okay with it. The reactors on board Academic Lomonosov are similar in design to the reactors powering the nuclear-powered icebreakers. Zolotkov tells that such loadings of nuclear fuel rods to the icebreakers have been carried out a dozen times at Atom Float service base without any problems. Do not forget that the one problem is all it takes. Do not forget, the floating nuclear power plant has attracted a lot of attention, so any potentially nuclear dangerous work will be carried out with increased control, Andrei Zolotkov says to the Barents Observer. This week, the uranium fuel will be loaded to the first reactor, then be followed by the second today. The specialists have started one of the most important tasks, the gradual loading of the nuclear fuel into the nuclear reactors, the reactor units, starting with number 1 and then number 2, said Vitaly Trutnev, head of the Directorate on Construction and Operation of the Floating Nuclear Power Plant, and prepared statement posted on the agency's portal. Trutnev says the testing of the reactors will start by the end of the year. The next stages that are to be implemented by the end of the year will be the physical launch of the reactors and the beginning of complex mooring tests, and will start to implement them after obtaining the relevant Rostekhnadzor permits. Rosener Gotem assures testing in Murmansk will be safe. Atom Float Base possesses all the necessary infrastructure, specialists, and competencies, both for loading the nuclear fuel and for physically launching the reactors, said Dmitry Alexyenko, deputy head of the Directorate on Construction and Operation of the Floating Nuclear Power Plant. After reactor testing, the plan is now to tow the plant across the Barents Sea and further east along the Northern Sea route to the port of Pevek next spring. The 2 KLT-40S reactor units can generate up to 70 megawatts of electric energy, additional to providing thermal heating to the town of Pevek. As previously reported by the Barents Observer, academic Lomonosov is the first of a series of different maritime reactors to power Russia's Arctic development in the years to come. The first in a series. Good news. We're going to get a whole bunch more nuclear reactors right before everything turns to poop. So that'll be helpful. This is from Truth Out. This is Darja Mail from yesterday, the growing challenge of living and working on a sweltering planet. The Northern Hemisphere's summer is showing how far along the planet is with human-caused climate destruction, as record high temperatures are shattered and sweltering heat waves kill dozens of people. Globally, June was Earth's 5th warmest ever recorded, according to the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's National Centers for Environmental Information. The same NOAA data also showed that the only warmer June months on record were those from the previous 4 years. As the planet continues to warm, it is becoming clear that the heat is bringing along with it the challenge of how to live and work safely. Making life unbearable, a brief glance around the world gives one a view of how rapidly and how intensely the planet is warming as human-caused climate disruption continues apace. In the US, 41 high-temperature records have already been set in July, and recently published study in Nature Climate Change predicts that increasingly higher temperatures will cause an increase in suicide rates, and warns that as many as 26,000 people could commit suicide in the US by 2050. These deaths would be, I'm sorry to laugh, 2050, 26,000 by 2050. There will be way more than that just die from heat by 2050 than commit suicide. So I imagine, I don't know, maybe that's it. Maybe that's all that'll be left to commit suicide. In May, dozens of people in Pakistan died from record high temperatures. In July, at least 70 deaths were attributed to a heat wave that swept across Canada's Quebec province. At the time of this writing, a heat wave in Japan bringing record high temperatures had killed at least 65 people and caused another 22,000 to be taken to hospital for heat stroke. The government there declared a natural disaster because of the extreme heat. This unprecedented heat is causing myriad problems, especially for workers. In the US, activists are working to push UPS to install air conditioning on their trucks, as numerous drivers have succumbed to heat stroke. Wow. Recently, the United Farm Workers Foundation, Farm Worker Justice, and consumer advocacy group Public Citizen joined another 130 public health and environmental groups in pressuring the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration to require employers to do a better job of protecting workers from the heat. This is a public health issue. So, UPS is going to put AC in their trucks instead of what they should be doing is pulling their trucks off the road. Because, things need to be delivered. This is a public health issue. Yeah. We're calling on OSHA not to delay anymore. In India, government officials are now discussing how some cities will become unlivable if a solution to the ever-increasing warm temperatures isn't found. According to the Urban Climate Change Research Network, globally, the number of cities with summer high temperatures of at least 95 degrees Fahrenheit is expected to nearly triple by the year 2050. No, at least 95 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm sorry. We should expect these issues to deepen and spread further around the world as the planet warms and life on a hotter planet becomes increasingly challenging and other heat-related health issues continue. It's just to interject, it's, again, we had another day where they're going to they said, the high is 91. It's now 96, 97. And I'm sure this is my phone is telling me it's 96. It feels really hot. In fact, many of my plants just looked like they were about to fall over and all the leaves were just almost gone on a lot of my plants today. I walked out and it's like, oh my God. So I had to take some emergency measures to keep my plants alive. Yeah. According to the Urban Climate Change Research Network, globally, the number of cities with summer high temperatures of at least 95 degrees Fahrenheit, we read that. We should expect these issues to deepen and spread further around the world as the planet warms and life on a hotter planet becomes increasingly challenging and other heat-related health issues continue. A recent study published by Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health found that high temperatures could even be bad for our brains. The study linked, it's bad for my brain, study linked cognitive impairments to warmer temperatures, even among young, healthy populations. Further underscoring the global issue is the fact that nighttime high temperatures are actually increasing faster than daytime high temperatures. That is a dangerous new phenomenon because it doesn't give the body a chance to cool down during the nighttime, which makes the sick, elderly, younger children, and people who work outside during the day particularly susceptible to the heat. For many years now, heat waves have been killing more Americans than any other natural disaster annually, and this trend is expected to increase as human-caused climate disruption continues apace. Let's see. In the U.S., oh, I've already read that. Where are we at? I think that's it. I think that's the end of the article. I didn't believe it, but it is so. It was one of the shortest Georgia Mail articles were read. I was expecting to give over a good portion of this video to this article, but no. I'm going to link that below and move on to the last article I wanted to read. Speaking of suicides, from The Guardian, suicides of nearly 60,000 Indian farmers linked to climate change, study claims. Rising temperatures and the resultant stress on India's agricultural sector may have contributed to increase in suicides over the past 30 years, research shows. This is from yesterday, or today. What day is it? I have no idea. Oh no, this is not from yesterday. Hold on. Everything's jumping around. I cannot see anything. This is from last year, July 31st, 2017. Climate change may have contributed to the suicides of nearly 60,000 Indian farmers and farm workers over the past 3 decades, according to new research that examines the toll rising temperatures are already taking on vulnerable societies. Illustrating the extreme sensitivity of the Indian agricultural industry to spikes in temperature, the study from the University of California, Berkeley found an increase of just 1 C on an average day during the growing season was associated with 67 more suicides. An increase of 5 C on any one day was associated with an additional 335 deaths. A study published in the journal PNAS on Monday found, in total, it estimates that 59,300 agricultural sector suicides over the past 30 years could be attributed to warming. Temperature increases outside the growing season showed no significant impact on suicide rates, suggesting stress on the agricultural industry was the source of the increase in suicides. Also supporting the theory was that rainfall increases of as little as 1 centimeter each year were associated with an average of 7% drop in the suicide rate. So beneficial was the strong rainfall that suicide rates were lower for the 2 years that followed, researcher Tama Carlton found. Farm sector suicides in India decreased last year but remain at epidemic levels in some states and are a source of immense pressure on legislators. One drought-hit state, Maharashtra, reported 852 farmer suicides in the first 4 months of this year, while in 2015, one of the worst years on record, about 12,602 farmers killed themselves across India. Overall, more than 300,000 farmers and farm workers have killed themselves in the country since 1995. In recent months, a site in central Delhi has been strewn with evidence of the despair felt by the Indian agricultural sector. Skulls and bones said to belong to farmers who killed themselves have been piled at Jantar Mantar, within walking distance of the Indian parliament. They were bought to Delhi by farmers from Tamil Nadu, a state suffering its worst drought in 140 years, which the protesters claim has triggered hundreds of suicides in the past months. Worse than the parched crops were the bank loans that loomed over many farming families, said Rani Radhar Krishnan, one of the Radhakrishnan, one of the protesters in February, owing 80,000 rupees or 945 pounds, her husband stood outside his bank branch in the city of Trichy and consumed a toxic concoction. He died on the spot. All right, that's all I'm going to read of this. I'm going to link it below and move on. I also wanted to mention that suicides in India are also linked to Monsanto growing crops of seeds from Monsanto, and the crops start failing, but they owe a lot of money to Monsanto for the seeds. Debt is a very big part of that. But Monsanto is an extremely evil player in all of this. Moving on to one more article, just a moment. Moving on to something that I wanted to read for a little while, but it keeps getting bumped off my list. But I thought it was an interesting article. This is also, we're going to stay in, this is from a few years ago. Hold on, when is this from? Please load, Mr. Article. Where are we? Here we go, from the National Post. Gangs of aggressive killer whales are shaking down Alaska fishing boats for their fish. This is from last year. June 19th, 2017, the orcas will wait all day for a fisher to accumulate a catch of halibut and then deftly rob them blind. They will relentlessly stalk individual fishing boats, sometimes forcing them back into port. Most chilling of all, this is new. After decades of relatively peaceful coexistence with cod and halibut fishers off the coast of Alaska, the region's orcas appear to be turning on them in greater numbers. We've been chased out of the Bering Sea, said Paul Clampett, Washington State-based co-owner of the FV Augustine. Like many boats, the Augustine has tried electronic noisemakers to ward off the animals, but the orcas simply get used to them. It became a dinner bell, said Clampett. John McHenry, owner of the FV Seymour, described orcapods near Alaska's Aleutian Islands as being like a motorcycle gang. You'd see 2 of them show up, and that's the end of the trip. Pretty soon, all 40 of them would be around you. Go orcas. A report this week in the Alaska Dispatch News outlined instances of aggressive orcas harassing boats relentlessly, even refusing to leave after a desperate skipper cut the engine and drifted silently for hours. Where are we? Drifted silently for 18 hours. It's gotten completely out of control, Alaska fisherman Jay Hebert told the paper. Fishing lines are also being pillaged by sperm whales, the large square-headed whale best known as the white whale in Moby Dick. Since 1997, reports of a depredation have increased dramatically, noted a report by the Southeast Alaska Sperm Whale Avoidance Project. A remarkable 2006 video by the Avoidance Project captured one of the 50,000 kilogram whales delicately shaking fish loose from a line. After a particularly heavy assault by sperm whales, fishers are known to pull up lines in which up to 90% of the catch has disappeared or been mangled. Some skippers will try to outrun a hovering pod, but the time and fuel needed to dodge a persistent gang of whales can wreak havoc on a trip's profitability. I've had the same sperm whale follow me 70 miles, Michael Offerman, with the FB Christiana, told the National Post by email. While fishing boats all across Alaska have reported harassment by orcas, the worst incidents all seem to be occurring in the Bering Strait, the body of water separating Western Alaska from Russia. In a 2014 study of Alaska fisheries, orcas snatching fish from the lines were estimated to cost boats as much as $500 per day. Compare that to Uruguay, where a 2015 study of boats using similar fishing techniques found that the presence of killer whales in the fishing ground seems not to affect the catch per unit effort. Whale predation on fishing boats is increasing in part due to a rebound of North Pacific whale populations brought about by the 1980s moratorium on commercial whaling. Up until then, cod and halibut fisheries were moving amongst whale populations that had been decimated by whaling fleets, and where survivors had learned to fear the approach of a boat engine. When I started fishing in the early 80s, when we saw a whale, it was an event, said Clampett. Now they circle the boat. This is not the first time that Alaskan waters have been suddenly thrown into disorder by the changing appetites of killer whales. In the 1990s, researchers found that orca predation was responsible for a sudden collapse in Pacific sea otter populations not seen since the animals were driven to near extinction by the fur trade. Orcas have remarkably complex social structures with regionally distinctive languages and hunting strategies. They're also innovative. Orcas have frequently been observed inventing new hunting tactics and then teaching them to others. In April, orcas off Monterey Bay, California, killed 4 gray whale calves over 8 days in what was described as an unprecedented killing spree by local media. Biologists attributed the episode to a single 9-member pod of orcas that had simply become unusually skilled at hunting gray whales. Similarly, harassed Alaska fishers say they are seeing increased numbers of juvenile whales. A possible these juvenile delinquent orcas. Motorcycle gangs. A possible sign that adult orcas are teaching their young to seek out fishing vessels for their meals. Ooh, setting a bad example. McHenry described pulling in lines clear to fish, only to notice that some fish near the end of the line were merely gnawed. That was them teaching the little ones. It's unfortunate. The orcas are putting us out of business because they're really phenomenal mammal, he said. And yeah, the only surefire way to ward off a pot of hungry orcas is pot fishing. Rather than fishing with exposed lines, boats convert to pots, essentially giant crab traps that trap fish rather than hook them. It's not a cheap fix. A pot conversion on the FV Augustine, for instance, costs $600,000 US. And while the method works for now, Clampett suspects the orcas might innovate a way around them. It's possible at some point that they might start hitting the pot, he said. Alaska fishing boats wouldn't be the only northerners to see more orcas lately as polar ice cover melts. It has allowed pods of orcas to swim ever deeper into the Arctic Ocean, where Inuit have observed the newcomers wreaking havoc on the slow-moving local fauna. An Inuit interviewee for the 2012 study on phenomenon said orcas would sometimes kill hundreds of belugas at a time. When the killer whales had left the kill site, Inuit would collect the maktak blubber from the numerous dead belugas. Aside from humans, orcas are the world's top apex marine predator. Found in all 7 of the world's oceans, pods of orcas have been seen handily killing other top marine predators, including great white sharks, walruses, and leopard seals. Unlike any other of the world's large hunters, however, orcas have spared humans. Although captive orcas have caused human deaths, to date there is no record of a human ever being killed by an orca in the wild. In fact, the only widely accepted amount of an orca attack on a human occurred in 1972, when California surfer Hans Kretschmer suffered an orca bite to his left thigh. I believe we're going to see, and we have seen signs of more wild animals encroaching on humans and what they're doing. They are running out of food. Of course, the orcas are going to be looking for fish that we capture because fish populations are collapsing, and they will continue to collapse as it gets warmer. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I'm sorry that the lag in this video is so huge. Clearly, I need to clean up some space in my computer. If you would like to contribute to this channel, you can do so at the links below. Hope to be back tomorrow with another video. Until next time, peace.